Is this month's meeting, October 3rd's HARB meeting. I have an opening statement. The Historic and Architectural Review Board, or the HARB, was created to protect and enhance the North Wayne, South Wayne, and Luella Court districts for the educational, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the public through preservation, protection, and regulation of buildings of historic interest or importance within the districts, and to safeguard elements of architectural history throughout the district which have been determined to be of historic significance. Under the provisions of the Historic District Ordinance, the HARB serves to review applications for the construction, addition, or demolition of any principal building or any additions or accessory buildings. That's our purpose here. We have one project tonight and some old business to attend to. I might just start with an announcement that I'll probably forget if I don't do it now. The next month's meeting, which is November 7th, will not be held in this building or in this room. It'll be in what's called the roll call room, which is downstairs. You still come to this building, and instead of coming into this room, you go down the main stairs, and then there'll be directions there. It's also not going to be televised, so if you do see something on the agenda that is important to you, you will not be able to see it, so unless you come to the meeting itself. So again, it's next month's meeting, which is November 7th, will be in the roll call room. And that'll be, I think we'll put that on the agenda too. It's probably a good idea to put a footnote on that, just to remind everybody. Okay, the first project this evening is HARB 2012-19. It's 219 Poplar Avenue. We're increasing the size of the existing garage with revisions from original presentation to HARB. Can someone come forward and introduce yourself and present what your changes are?
Good evening. My name is Christian Wynn. I'm the owner and builder at 219 Poplar Avenue. What we are proposing is an addition to the existing garage on the property. The existing garage is in the solid white line. We are looking to widen the garage by 6 feet and increase the pitch of the roof to gain upstairs storage space. The new garage will have an interior staircase and will be finished in either a cedar shake siding with overhanged eaves, carriage front door, and a solid wood person entrance door to match the existing house. I have pictures of the existing garage. This is the existing garage as it sits today, and we would be adding, obviously, to the left side, 6 feet from this. The garage door entrance would stay the same area, but we would remove this wall and add a person door here on this side. And here is an aerial view of the garage from the second floor of the current structure.
Now, just to remind us all how this has evolved, one of the first introductions of this was to basically double the size of the garage, as I recall.
Well, the original plan, which was presented two sessions ago, increased to 22 feet and was a 12-12 pitch of the roof. What we did is we narrowed this from 22 to 18 feet, the same depth, and we lowered the pitch from a 12 pitch to a 10 pitch. This is a garage that is to the left of us, looking out the same window where I took the picture. This is 217 Poplar Avenue. Our garage would be much smaller than this with a lower roof pitch. The overall height of our roof would be 20 feet and would not be the same steep pitch as this. Just to, it would be a smaller version without this front gable dormer.
And the use of the extra 6 feet is kind of a storage facility, equipment and so forth, like what a shed would be used for?
Absolutely, yes, sir. What they're looking to do is be able to contain lawnmowers, bicycles, trash cans, while still being able to park the car inside.
So if this was if we were not to be able to add this 6 feet, you would be sort of forced into looking into a shed alternative?
Absolutely. With the way the current garage is, it's just enough size for one car with no side left or right storage and very little extra depth to do anything in front of the car. So they would be forced to do a storage for their bicycles, lawnmowers, trash cans.
And I think, Ray, I'm going to ask you a question about sheds in general, as far as permitting or maximum size, unpermitted, or any kind of information like that you could give to us?
In general, sheds go through a zoning permit, which would not come in front of HARB. So the privy here is that, I don't know what else you would be asking.
Well, I mean, is there a size shed that you can, say, put on a property that doesn't require permits?
We go up to 200 square feet that requires a zoning permit only. Anything over 200 would go to a building permit.
And does zoning include grading and, it gets into the whole impervious issues and all that?
Yes, comes into play on the bigger sheds over the 200.
But over 200?
Yeah.
All right, so you've got what is the size you're adding, 6 by 22?
Currently, it's 12 by 22, and we would be adding 6 feet of width. So
Okay.
the overall would be 18 by 22 versus, like I said, the current 12 by 22.
Okay. But, the addition is 6 by 22.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're adding less than what sort of a shed that would be able to be put on the site in addition to this structure.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, to me, that sounds like, if you do it with a permit, you still have to go through stuff, but up to 200 feet, you can kind of do whatever you want, and then all of a sudden we have more massing on this site. So that was what I was getting at, is that we're adding, or he's proposing to add a smaller portion to this structure than what would be, if we didn't allow this, there may be a bigger structure, another structure. So that's one point. Does anybody have any quick comments on?
Well, I
Other things?
guess the first time we went through this, we looked at the, kind of materials and so forth that was being used. That's all going to be the same, I imagine.
I'm just showing two different types of materials. One, the current residence right now is a asphalt shingled roof with an actual treated cedar siding. The other option that we are also looking at is doing a beaded, smooth beaded siding in like a hardy plank material to complement the house, but just kind of driven sort of also by price. Obviously, the cedar is much more expensive than using hardy plank, but matching the color. The current garage right now is a vinyl white siding that is similar similar to this, like just a beaded 5 type siding.
Just to clarify this, you said that are these elevations what you're proposing? Because when I look at the front elevation, it doesn't look like it's a solid door, is it, to go in, that single door?
The person door?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding the question. I apologize.
My question is, on the elevation that you're showing, the front elevation,
Here?
yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
that door where your finger is pointing, yeah, is that, you said that was going to be a solid door?
A wood door, a solid wood door.
A solid wood door, okay. And then the garage that you're proposing is a one-car garage still, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. We'd be using the existing opening.
Okay.
or actually, with the existing opening, I believe, is an 8 by 7. It may open to a 9 by 7. I'm not exactly sure of the measurement, but it would be a single garage door still with the same. Currently, this is what is here now. We were just looking to add this entrance door.
I was just confused because when you showed the picture of the other garage, that was a two-bay garage.
No. No, that was one.
Was it one?
When you say the other.
Oh, you mean the first one was a two-bay?
Yeah, the first
The
one was a
neighbor-
one bay and 12 feet
Oh.
wide.
No, the neighbor's
Oh,
garage.
I apologize. This is just the neighbor's garage directly to my left. I'm sorry. I was just showing the proportion. I was trying to give it a reference to proportion.
Oh, okay.
We would be a smaller, lower pitched, lower height roof and garage. Sorry, I didn't mean to confuse it.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Would you be willing, as a condition for approval, be willing to somehow state that you wouldn't add a shed on this property?
I would be more than happy to state that, but I have the home as it sits right now is under agreement of sale with new potential owners, and I really wouldn't be able to speak for them.
Right.
I believe that it isn't their intention, and the reason that they're going through this is because they don't want to have a shed. So
Right.
I wouldn't foresee it, but I can't speak for them.
No, I don't think that
Can't
we
do
could
that?
do that.
That doesn't come under our purview at all.
Yeah, I don't
That
think,
doesn't come underneath the ordinance.
How about if it's just a recommendation? Not an official recommendation?
Not even a suggestion.
Okay. I'll retract that then. All right, well, I think in terms of what we're seeing, it's a smaller footprint than the first one. It does offer storage, which I'm hoping will not be introduced as another building on site, which we don't have any really purview over. But I think if we allow this small expansion, we'll lessen that probability. And in terms of how this site works with the density and the massing of it, it would be better not to have anything else on site.
you don't have a site plan, do you?
I do, yes, ma'am.
Could you just show that to us?
This is the original proposal with the original, when we were adding 10 feet. So this site plan shows a larger coverage size, but this is the kind of the layout of the yard. This would just become narrower by the 4 feet that we're proposing. This is showing the 20 by 22, and we're doing the 18 by 22. This is the old site plan. We're going to be still using the same sized stormwater system to collect rainwater as we would be if we were to use, if we were to build the bigger one, the bigger footprint, excuse me.
Any other questions?
No, no.
Anything else? You want to make a recommendation?
Sure. Recommendation to approve a COA.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, sorry. We don't have public comment yet, sorry. Let's hold off on the vote and have some public comment.
This is the, okay. Do you want the, anything else?
No, I think this, Yeah, but actually, this one would be good. Okay. Hello, I'm
We usually do.
Matthew Marshall, 228 Walnut Avenue, and I'm impressed and I'm grateful to the applicant for working with the neighbors on some recommendations for both the home and for the proposed garage expansion. I did want to speak to this because I think it will be a part of your subsequent discussion regarding the just some of the facade and the exterior elements to the garage. As you can see, this is a home that's immediately adjacent to the new construction. I'm guessing this garage was built probably as a carriage house back in the 1880s or thereabout. My home, you can barely make it out, but I also have a detached two-story barn, which was once a hennery and once had milking cow, and it's very much a part of the fabric of the historic North Wayne district. And the reason I call them out is that I think they're both very much in keeping with the architecture of North Wayne and have some architectural elements that I would like the applicant to consider. I know his intent is to build the garage and perhaps put a cedar shake material on the garage. I think that would be much more in keeping with the surrounding architecture of the neighborhood. We do have hardy plank, but I can tell from my personal experience, if you're looking at a cedar shake structure versus a hardy plank facade, it looks much more in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood. So I would encourage him to do that. We've talked about some other things relative to buffering, but that's not really the purview of this board. But I just wanted to, in closing, again, thank the applicant for keeping within the architectural elements of this neighborhood, and if he could continue doing so with this garage, I'm sure it will be appreciated by the neighbors.
Thank you, Matt.
Hello, Jim Schneller. Although I'm not an immediate neighbor, I intensely appreciate the character and historic significance of this block and travel on it 3 times, 4 times weekly, and I haven't an inclination to do anything other than validly come before you at times when necessary. I wanted to remind you, if I could, without going into detail, the fact that when this was remanded by the commissioners, I don't know if that's the word, but they kindly did suggest this come back, that it was done so under an atmosphere, of somewhat of a gray area of where both bodies stand, you and the board. B, there was agreement among many of the commissioners and a lot of the audience, and especially at the prior commissioners' meeting of the audience, that there was a need for you to take as many looks at it as necessary to keep it within the law. And C, the solicitor at the commissioners' meeting reminded the board, when certain members of the board wanted it to come back here, that they did not have to stick to the garage. So at least for the benefit of your knowledge, and at my request, that you take a look further at issues like the new second-story enlargement in the name of Wayne's historic character. There is legal precedent for things to go back and forth. We've seen a great example in the past 18 months, and I think if you talk to Mr. Hallowell, he does not want me quoting him, but it seems to me that there was a lot of productivity came out of those, and maybe it's meaningful for the Harb in the future and the commissioners to know where you stand. At any rate, if things are undecided, you've got a lot of scope. You've got the power to make findings more than anybody because you're purely advisory. If I could respectfully object to the comment from staff, you can suggest a shack. I mean, there's no decisions in the law in this regard, and under many sections for instance, Section 8003, under phraseology like significant architectural features, historical values representing the cultural, political, economic, or social history of the township, these stand as directly mitigating to other phrases that say only consider things from the street. In other words, the statute hasn't been tested and tried as far as that phrase that you can only judge things as they're seen from the street, insofar as things like you're admirably looking at regarding the garage. It is somewhat visible from the street, but you've taken it upon yourself to think of future residents of Wayne and to think of the character of that block and the neighborhood. If I could say, finally, that you are permitted to take a look at this application. This will be your last time. It seems to me there is some ambiguity as to materials, and the plans, if they don't show full detail, is another reason why you might table it for consideration amongst yourselves, perhaps even in light of what I've said. I believe that the neighbors that were here for 2 or 3 consecutive meetings have made a lot of good points. It would be wonderful if you could elaborate on these, put them into writing for reference, for residents to go back the third meeting after this meeting and to evaluate the situation, for you to take a look at it. There would be more people here tonight if people hadn't kind of felt that the commissioners, there was like an electricity of sending it back again. Whereas this time, if you gave us 20 reasons on either side, let the residents, let people in the township who care, let the Historical Society take a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Any other public comment? I apologize for that. I sometimes get a little ahead of myself. So thanks for speaking up. I think we had a motion and a second. Do we need to repeat that, or?
Motion to recommend approval of a COA.
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 We have 4-0. Okay, so that motion passes, and it will go before the commissioners for their review and approval, and any other things you have to do, zoning or construction, permitting, has to go beyond us, as you know. So, I think the only other comment now that we voted is, if you can stay with cedar on this site, that'd be great. I don't have a strong feeling about the siding not being appropriate. I mean, they're used interchangeably in this area. Not so much, I don't think the beaded siding is used in this time frame. It's usually a German shiplap or just a flat siding or a tapered siding. So just as a general suggestion, number 1 would be stay with cedar to make it all compatible and all the same. Number 2, if you go to a siding, I wouldn't go with a beaded necessarily. That's a newer detail. And I know it's a minor thing. This is an accessory building, but we are reviewing it tonight. So I think that's probably all we need to say about that, unless anybody else has. Do we have any new business? Okay. Old business is also 219 Poplar Avenue. The Board of Commissioners asked that the applicant reappear to discuss, and I'll quote from the the agenda, to discuss non-binding exterior cosmetic architectural details of a second-floor addition per their direction. So maybe you can walk us through all of that. Thank you.
In regards to the siding that you suggested, I will make sure that that is passed along to the homeowners. and I'm sure that they'll be more than happy to forego the beaded siding if they are to go with that, with a German shiplap, with just
Okay.
a smooth finish.
Okay, thank you.
On our last visit, it was the Board of Commissioners asked that I return to show the current structure. These are some color pictures. I know it's kind of difficult to see on the screen with the shadows from the trees. I also have a copy of the blueprint, but the rear of the house, which was the question part, is a little bit clearer. And this is as it stands today. We've done the additional overhangs and the additional porch, and the entire structure itself is in the treated cedar siding that we had received a certificate of appropriateness for. Would you also like to?
Can you pull the plan out next to that and
Yes,
just
sir.
show that at elevation and then? Perfect, thank you.
Obviously, this picture is taken from a lower vantage point, so it kind of obstructs the view of the dormer ups on the top side, and this tree blocks this area around the door.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to just comment in a positive manner on is that the drawing has a minimalistic look in terms of the trims, the rakes, door trims, window trims, and in reality, they appear much bigger. Maybe it's because of the angle I'm looking at it from the ground, but it has a more rich texture to it than what the drawing actually shows. So I think in terms of what has been built versus what was drawn, it's better in that sense.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys feel that way, but that's
One thing that I definitely think that helps would have been if I had had a color rendering of the original drawings would have helped to show some of that definition. I think it is hard to sometimes see the depth on just a black and white or blueprint.
Well, you're getting a ground perspective, so you're seeing the overhangs and all of those issues that you'd only see on an elevation, so I think that's what Cam's really bringing out. It's very flat if you look at a normal elevation, even though those elements were in there from the beginning. But you're almost getting like a 20-degree shot from the ground.
Well, I think that the color makes a big difference too, because on the elevation, the moldings around the windows and the doorways don't stand out.
Mhm.
Whereas when you actually look at it, at what's been built, it's,
Just pass that around so we can take a look at the actual picture.
Yes.
Just for a minute, we'll take it off the screen.
Would you like to see the other ones as well?
I think that would be helpful. It's really hard to see. Certainly.
So the commissioners really just asked us to look at the second floor piece.
This was the piece that was in question.
Yes, sir. And then this is that side view.
So Christian, maybe you can just outline with your finger the second floor piece that we're supposed to be looking at on that rear elevation, and then maybe show it on the sides as well.
This piece here, this section right in here, and then it would be from the right side or elevation, this square here to here.
Right. And then all we see on the, I guess that's the south elevation, is just an extended roof line, really, that piece there.
Oh, yes, it would be this line and up this
Right.
section here.
Okay. Thank you. I don't think I have any additions that, I mean, I think as is. Well, let me just look at one thing.
I was just looking for that, not really.
This is the piece that was in question here, this section.
Right.
This is the right side elevation.
But there's no other, is that this?
Yes, no, this here.
That's this.
This corner is this corner.
Oh, I see. Right.
This window is this window. This view is where it's looking like this.
See, I think what I was talking about is, in the drawings, you don't really, there's no corner boards, I don't think. Maybe there are really, really tiny ones, but, what you have there is it feels like a heavier detail, so it's a better detail. The only detail that was not introduced was on the north side where I think you were going to try to either offset the main house from that addition or put a line down that was sort of a corner board or something, that line there.
Yes, that was.
Which is not a huge, player for me at this point, but.
We actually, when we were doing the siding, had sort of mocked it up with a dividing piece of AZAC that would show some definition, and it definitely did not.
Didn't do it.
It definitely did not look right.
Okay. All right, well, this is not a votable issue, really. It's just if we feel like we wanted to give you some recommendations or suggestions, that's what we do. If we don't have any suggestions, we don't. And
That was my understanding.
That's pretty much it.
They just wanted basically to have me show you where the project was with this, and if you had any sort of suggestions, of maybe we try this or that. But I think that the way that it turned out, taking into your suggestions from before with the overhangs, using the cedar siding, giving the trim, a bigger detail, that I really think it made some difference. And obviously the contrasting color from, with besides just a black and white print, if you will.
Okay. I have no recommendations or suggestions to do anything further.
Okay.
Consistent with the entire structure.
Yeah. Everybody in agreement?
Yeah, I'm
Okay. So we all agree on that. Any public comment on this particular portion? Do you need pictures for this?
Well, I'm going to show something that
Okay.
demonstrate my point. I don't know if they can scan in on that, but just,
Push it up a
this
little
is
bit.
pre-siding, so it doesn't really match what's existing today, but what, again, I'm Matt Marshall on 228 Walnut, and just some background, I was on the Planning Commission here for 8 years, so my initial, I guess my initial interpretation was that this was a project that, at least in my experience, would have gone through land development, and there would have been a notification to the neighbors, and there would be much more input. Didn't happen that way. I guess that was a different era in Radnor Township, but that being said, it's built, and the only thing I had mentioned to the applicant, this is a photograph taken from my back door, which is actually a 30-foot setback from my kitchen. And on a human scale, if you look at the contractor, that's what we have on top of us today, when previously we just had a very sublime roof line with trees in the background. My recommendation to the township would be, if there is a request granted for a variance for a higher fence in the backyard, that would be considered. 8 feet, and I think that's, fairly reasonable given the amount of buffer I think we'll need. Secondly, if the applicant would consider additional plantings in the rear, I know that's not your purview, but I think under normal circumstances, that would have been a request under land development. And then lastly, I think one of the things that you could influence is the lighting on the back of the structure. There is a spotlight coming just below where that gentleman is roofing the structure. If your board could consider some way to have that directional lighting down as opposed to out, this will become the new norm in North Wayne, and it might be worth considering that if there's any way to soften the lighting. Again, this structure, in my opinion, should have gone through a land development. It did not, but if we can make some modifications now before it's completed, I think it would bode well for new development going forward in the historic district. Thank you.
There's
Thank you,
separate zoning, there's separate ordinances regarding lighting that they've proposed, that they've put in over the past year or so, and which doesn't come under our purview.
Right.
In fact, we wouldn't even get involved with a lantern that might be out on a post somewhere.
Yeah.
That's just, just the way they.
Right. But had it gone through a land development, had there been notification, there would have been recommendations made before the building was built.
Yeah, but that wasn't, yeah.
Yeah.
And just as an aside, instead of a high fence, I'd recommend either cryptomeria or false cypress. They both grow fast, there's no maintenance, and they're beautiful evergreens along the border.
That's a good recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Jim Schneller again, St. David's. I wanted to emphasize that, as I grazed in my last comment, there is a reason why this has been sent to you. You have all leeway to recommend. As an advisory body, you have the leeway to really say what you feel and to put township policy into practice. There is a huge demand for precedent from you. Wayne's future architectural significance cries out for precedence from you. The two-wall criterion in land development, for leaving two walls standing, while it may
Hey,
be
Jim?
relevant here,
We really can't talk about that here.
well, maybe a little relevant here, is nicely opposed or graced with the standard that you have. It's according to statute, some of the wider scope I've mentioned, where you have comment ability and persuasive ability based on the actual change to a neighborhood, change in character, and as one woman who was a neighbor and an expert commented 2 meetings ago, there was a significance to this existing building. And one or two commissioners were almost visibly skeptical about that. We're looking at 10, 15 years since the HARB became noticeably necessary. So buildings in the 50s, 40s, and 50s are of huge significance. And we thank you for all that you've let this affect your decision. Your suggestion is requested, however, that there be some kind of recommendation, whether it's here or soon in any way, to the board that there be no ability for a builder to circumvent, and that buildings in a historic district, no matter what the era, are significant. Because if windows are opening for people to change the character noticeably, do we want to have, and this is a huge issue, do you want to have a North Wayne that is a copycat North Wayne? Or do you want to leave the ones from the 50s or, from the 40s and all the different styles that really exist? So I hope that you might recommend, along with this, with any comment you send, I hope there will be, with the initial motion tonight, that you recommend some kind of a sanction or otherwise a general look and recommendation that there be changes to the ordinance or simply a policy. You've got leeway right in the ordinance under section 178.9 for enforcement. Community development has a lot of power in this regard. And furthermore, the state statute gives community development enforcement power. And if we don't exercise it now, this will be the third time well, the second and a half time that something has been able to slip by. If you could also, I would request, take in skyscape, the envelope. This edition here, you have probably by natural forces been encouraged to let fait accompli, the fact that it's built, affect your decision. However, that's not what the law says in past precedent. If someone has taken it upon themselves, even to continue building after this bubbled up, that's their risk. So please, put something in your recommendation tonight. You think that's possible? Could you gently urge the board to sanction the individual or otherwise?
When a historic district is developed, wherever it is, there are certain criteria that are used to define that area. In this case, the period looked at was the development by Drexel and Childs of the entire North Wayne and later on South Wayne area. They're all what they call contributory buildings. When you start getting infill houses that has occurred over the years, like the 50s homes and the 60s homes that you're talking about, they don't really call that contributory to the historic aspects of that development. If in fact, for example, in seaside areas where there's think of Wildwood. Here's a good example. Wildwood has a hodgepodge of 1950s motels and stuff, which are now considered historic, along with the honky-tonks that are along the boardwalk. It's a menage of stuff, but that's what they considered as what makes Wildwood. You can go up and down the coast, you'll see the same thing.
Well, the shore is incredibly
Exactly. It's very diverse, but that's what makes the shore the shore. What makes North Wayne and South Wayne the historic district are those original homes that were put up by Drexel and Childs. So that's why the focus is always on those things. And, you know, when you see a 50s home pop up in the middle of nowhere, it's like, it's jarring. And we go out of our way just with
the viewer.
Well, absolutely correct. You know, when I first got involved with this in the early 70s, I mean, everything, the focus was on pre-20th century homes primarily. And over the years, once you got into the 80s, you started little things of 60s and 70s, 50s homes starting to come in. Why? Because the supply of Victorians and everything else was already being occupied and worked on. The next batch were, okay, let's look at 50s homes and 60s homes as being significant. And it's like you say, it's in the eyes of the beholder. No question about it. No question about it. You go back 20 years, no one was looking at any of those homes.
As you're traveling down Poplar, this was a break in the 2.5 story. It's an ability to see the backs of some of the Drexels and Childs in the winter. And as you've taken into consideration this time again, whatever you can see from the sidewalk matters. They use the nomenclature pedestrian viewpoint in the law. And frankly, any demolition at all triggers your input.
Thank you, Jim. Well, I think just to respond a little bit to that, we did, in a previous meeting, make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners for a piece of this structure not to be constructed. And they overturned that and asked us to look at it again. So the process, we went through the process, and they did tell us, they did not agree with us, ultimately, and asked us if we could look at it again and see if there was anything that could be done in a detailed manner, because they did not agree that the massing was out of sync with everything. That's my understanding of how it came back. And so that was our job tonight. We were told we're not here to argue with them and tell them that we still don't agree with them or whatever. We were given a specific charge by the board. So that's what we've done. We've all looked at it, and we've agreed that there's really nothing else that we feel needs to be added to that particular piece. And I think this is probably, I would think, the last time this is coming through, right? Okay. All right, so that's, I think we're finished on that issue. We don't have any other things on the table? Okay. I keep threatening everybody that I'm going to do this presentation about zoning and HARB. I was going to try to do it for November, but since we're not televising it, I want to do it where everybody can see it, so it looks like it'll be in December, assuming we're coming back in here. But anyhow, I have to work with zoning and building department to present it to them first so everybody's on the same page. And then my intention is to go through a typical project and say, here's what zoning does. And these are the parameters, and these are the things that we can do within zoning, and this is what you're allowed to do, and this is what you're not allowed to do. And then what does HARB do with that, on top of that, in place of, or we can't do anything. So I want to get that out there and kind of make people understand, because it's very confusing, and it's hard for everybody to understand how this all works. So I was hoping to do that, and have a whole discussion about that. We would have the zoning officer here, and we would go through the whole thing. So it looks like that's December, maybe, but it'll be on the agenda if we do it. It'll be posted, so we'll let you know. All right, motion to adjourn. Anybody second that?
Second?
Okay, I'm in favor. Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.